Blog Talk Radio.
My joy and excitement to invite you all to join me in discovering Mary O'Malley. And we have talked to you before, Mary. It's so good to have you back. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be back.
This is truly a masterful moment because it is an expression of spontaneity and how spirit moves. And as a clinical psychologist, a clinical hypnotherapist, I tend to try to be really research-oriented. There's tons of research in what we're going to talk about, Mary, but I think today we're actually going to be very experiential so that people can move into their ponderment about the spiritual realm, their questions about their psychic powers or the psychic phenomena that goes on, and their involvement with emotional healing as it relates to relationships in our past. And I could go on and on, but the introduction is Mary O'Malley. You have arrived to tell us about the psychic world that you have been able to touch. So where do you want to start us on this adventure today?
Well, I guess start from the beginning. Many years ago, my dear friend Carol Francis sort of gave me that nudge into exploring my psychic talents. And you being such a scientist, I felt comfortable exploring that with you. And then it just kind of took off from there until my experience this weekend. And I was able to do a mediumship psychic reading for a group of people in a room. And it was my first experience really doing it that way. And it was just profound for me, and also for the people in the room. But for me, just expanding myself in that way, it was, it was just an incredible experience. And I learned so much from the process, even though I've been doing this for so many years. Just opening myself up to doing it in a new way allowed me to learn so much.
You're going to take us through this expansion that you went through, and it's interesting that we're using this word expansion because while I've been writing and authoring and working on chapters and books and marketing this weekend, the word expansion over and over has come to mind. I've been studying just to put us into the scientific realm for just a second. I've been studying an amazing book called Singularity, and it's about human beings transcending their biology. And the scientist talks about technology just advancing so amazingly, geometrically. If every year it's doubling, then just imagine what doubling means down the road. But what occurred to me while reading this amazingly interesting book about the expansion of technology is that the human psyche, the human spirit, the human soul, the human mind, the brain even, is not keeping up to speed with this incredible advancement, and yet we as human beings created this advancement. So I began to realize that part of what is involved in our spiritual exploration, the power of our mind, our spirit, our soul, our connection to domains that are outside of our physical biology, transcending our biology, is our psychic capacities, Mary. And I think that listeners, you are about to hear things that Mary went through and took others through, and I want you to just open yourself up, put aside the critical judgment for a period of time just so you can go in awe, and then you can go back to critical judgment. That's a helpful state of mind as well. And Mary, can you start us on the journey as it began to transpire this weekend, or with the first story of your weekend that comes to mind that you think is the place to begin, that helps everybody go, okay, we're on a journey here, a journey of personal expansion?
it was interesting, the group of people that came together, because I checked right into Spirit right away and said, well, how did they know each other before? Because I believe that, we have so many instances to reconnect with each other, through spiritual other lives. And I got this very clear picture of, and it was all women, slogging through the mud and the blood sometime during World War I. They were all nurses. And I just was so amazed. There's this room full of healers, all back together again. And I just was touched, just that opportunity for them to reconnect on that spiritual level. So that pretty much started it.
Wow.
And then, I think what got me the most through all this is, as people pass on and they stay connected to us, or we continue to keep them connected to us. Mm-hmm. We hold on to them so tightly. But what I was able to see through this work on Friday night was how damaging that can be, both for the person who's passed on, in keeping them in a place, in that human place of anguish or control, or whatever experience they were having, and at the same time holding us back, because we're still influenced by that entity that we're holding on to so tightly. Mm-hmm. And so the reality of our existence is being even shaped and molded in many ways by that connection, that, we can stay connected, we can send love and all that kind of, everything we need to, we can talk to them, they're all still around. But what I'm talking about is that hold on tight connection. And it doesn't allow the spirit to move on to finding out who they truly are and what their next journey is. And it doesn't allow us to move on, because we're trapped in a past, in a past relationship, in past patterns that, we're supposed to move through. Wow. So in that way, I think we have to be careful about what we do with that person who's passed on, what our expectation is of that person who's passed on.
Well, can you give us an example, or can you walk us down a particular path that, without disclosing personal details necessarily, but yet giving us a specific journey that led to this lesson?
Okay. The first one was the spirit was the mom, and very connected still to the daughter, but the mom in life was very controlling. From her perspective, it was the only way to be a good mother is to control every aspect of her children's life. And she was still trying to do this. And the person involved was taking on all that energy from the mom in order to protect her siblings from that energy. She knew intuitively what was going on, but she didn't realize how it was affecting both her and her mother, keeping her mother from moving on and moving into who she truly is, and moving on to her next journey. So that's a lot of pressure for this person in my class, to be carrying all that, and quite unnecessary and not healthy, all the way around for us. In another instance, it was someone hanging on to a person in their life that was very important, that had a very tragic ending, and the anguish that this poor soul was in and so lost. And in my mind, all the love that this woman missed out on because of that very, very strong connection to this young man. In that one, around the young man, and he was so anguished and he was so lost, he just, didn't know how to let go, didn't know how to move on, couldn't do it. And around him I saw three angels, and one of them was Archangel Michael. And so we got the permission to begin this releasing. And Archangel Michael literally took his sword and started severing those connections, but the connection was so strong and it had been going on for so long that I was kind of shocked at the violence needed to disconnect us. And I shared that with you before. You know, that, wow, what are we doing? Yeah, I think we, as I said before, just really need to be careful on our expectations of the spirit of the person who's passed along. We need to acknowledge them and love them and accept their presence in our life, but without binding them in such a way that it's unhealthy. And I'm sure most of us have no idea we've done that.
You know, can I like ask you to go into your psychic power moment, and how did you tap into this? What was the process you went through as a reluctant psychic to like see this, experience, know this, and share this, and then watch the person receive your message and move into healing over it? What is it like for you as a psychic?
Well, it's an allowing. I prayed really hard to be 100% in my integrity, as you call me, the reluctant psychic.
Yes.
And the only way I could really approach this was to be completely open to the process and ask that it come from 100% integrity as far as my part in the process. Mm-hmm. So I said that prayer, and I invited in loving spirits. You know, nobody was there to work with darkness here.
Right.
And so I invited them into the room, and I had early on in the morning gone into the room to help set up the chairs, and could feel already the room full of entities and spirits and joy, and it was a pretty cool experience. But for this, I basically, since it was my first time doing this on this level. Maybe I shouldn't say that, but it was a matter of just closing my eyes and saying a prayer and trust the information that comes in. I would open my eyes, I'd be looking at somebody, and I knew this was for them.
Wow.
But I think, you know, the prayers and the just allowing it to be an experience of integrity all the way around, it was my opening for this.
You know, listeners, as you contemplate what Mary has just said, I want you to know I've known Mary for quite a while here, and I don't know, like 15, almost 20 years or something like that. And Mary, what I know about you is that when you hear yourself say these sorts of things, another part of you goes, did I just say that? That must sound really weird to others. And I know that when you're not being recorded, you actually are freer to say even more in-depth things, because we both know that this sounds wacky to the Western mind that believes that we are all that we are, there's no spiritual realm, or that we are an end of ourselves. And we also know plenty of people who are crazy that think they know this stuff. So I know that we are up for the scrutinization of everybody when we start talking along these lines. So can you kind of talk about how you experience the need to scrutinize yourself and how you walk into trying to have integrity and also be scientific and go, whoa, I can't believe I'm doing this?
Oh, that's how many questions at once?
I know, but it was a general idea, right, Mary?
Finding words to explain that. I'm more of a feelings person, and I think I feel my way through the process more than anything. I do get some visuals. It's not like I actually physically see the entities in the room, although I do receive information on that, and I really don't know how to explain that process. There's the information I receive is pretty clear, but you know I can't say that I'm seeing the entities in the room, but some part of me is seeing them. So, you know, just like you said, calling me the reluctant psychic, and that's it. It's about the scrutiny. I've worked really hard, you know, to be professional. I have a master's degree and all of that, and this part of me I've always wondered about it, but but the reality is, in my practice, I've seen some of the biggest healings ever through using this intuitive process. And I think it's because it really speaks to the person in front of me, to that secret in their soul, the ultimate knowing of themselves. So when I talk about integrity, it's not just from my point of view of channeling the information without my own intellectual interference, but for the integrity of the person in front of me to know the truth when they hear it, to acknowledge it. And a lot of times we walk around with all these little secrets. And it's either we're afraid to know it because it might cause some pain, or we know it, but we're not sure it's our own voice. So the process of this work is, for me, my joy is when that person experiences their own true knowing, identifies their own true voice, and this work really helps them do that. And, of course, any kind of therapist, our job is to create a safe space for that to happen. And I think that's the gift, is being able to create that safe space and help them to hear that voice and that knowingness that belongs to them. They don't have to deny it any longer, and heal through that process. You, as a psychologist, as a therapist, you help people with that. You have maybe a certain way that you do that. You bring them to that. But I'm doing it through the intuitive counseling, and it's profound. You as a healer know how profound that can be, to see that look on the person's face.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my gosh. I can go home at the end of the day just feeling so elevated by all the opportunities I've had to see people step out of their chains. This person that you talked about just a moment ago, reference, what was her reaction to receiving this information that she needed to let go, and that there was like almost a battle of warfare on behalf of her and on behalf of this gentleman that had passed over, that let go, so that life can be embraced, so that you can expand, so that you can move into who you are. What was the transition for her? What did you notice?
What did I notice? Now, I moved on pretty quickly because it was such an intimate experience that I didn't want to belabor it in a group.
Yeah.
I wanted her to have some privacy with that. But
beautiful, the
stillness that overcame her body, that moment of, was pretty profound. That, once again, I tried to be sensitive to the intimacy of things that are revealed, which is why I really shied away from doing groups before, because I like people to have their privacy in these moments.
Right.
Although I can't say it turned into any kind of issue in this group, you know what I mean? It still felt like a very safe place to explore that. So my own sensitivity in that regard.
I'm sorry. Tell us another story. I apologize. I'm too excited here.
Another story
from this weekend.
Well, a woman had a really good question. She about reincarnating with soul groups, and she was a little uncomfortable thinking that she could be a wife and then be the daughter to the same person, in the next lifetime, and be the child to the currently might be her child now, come back as that person's child or lover or something like that. The concept made her feel a little icky, as you can imagine.
Oh, wow.
And
interesting.
So I asked for the information to come through, and in the explanation of as this huge unlimited entity, how do we experience ourselves? And coming to Earth in all these different guises is a way to do that. So, but later on, after it was over and I was home in bed, it was almost like I received a clearer picture of that it's quite often one solid entity, being, energy, spirit, experiencing themselves in all these different ways. So it's not just different soul groups working with you, but also within yourself having all these manifestations. So, this time you're the mother, this time you're the daughter, this time you're the lover, this time you're this or that, which was something new for me. Because, we learn and we listen to other people, and apparently we travel in soul groups and experience all these things together. But what I got was not only that, but as an entity, or as one entity, having all these manifestations of ourselves together, because we're not limited as energy spirits. We're not limited at all. We can manifest in any way we choose. So I thought that was very interesting.
Wow. Let me see if I can absorb that. So as energy spirits, so if we look at ourselves as the energy that we are essentially, coalesced in this current time and place and consciousness and body. So here we are transcending biology again. So as energy spirits, we are not limited. So tell me more. I can't wrap my mind around it. I can't wrap my limited mind around this. How did you experience this insight?
Well, interestingly, there was a certain comfort that came from it. That it was quite, all these experiences I'm having in a human body were my choice. That I could actually have them with myself. I could be myself and my lover at the same time. Myself and my abuser at the same time. I could be my child and myself as parent at the same time. Which is freaky.
Okay, so I understand the concept, and I can certainly think of Gestalt psychotherapy, where you play the different roles of your dream, and you access these different like alter ego states or ego selves. And I can think about hypnosis that talks about I can think about how this applies in lots of people's awareness, but it seems like you're talking about it more dynamically or more completely.
Does it? For me, this was just a huge. I have been putting myself out there in a small way for quite a while, like you said.
Yeah.
This was a huge experience for me also, and I believe as I continue this work, I'm going to receive more information or a deeper understanding. Unfortunately, my big spirit self really gets the stuff, and my poor little human self is struggling to expand and learn, and I think we tend to open up in increments. We can open up and get this, and then the next one comes along, and stair-stepping like you go through school, first grade, second grade, third grade. So I'm confident, that I'm maybe the second semester of first grade now, and start working my way through these concepts. And only because people ask me the question. There are questions I would never think to ask necessarily. So I know that this learning process is not just about me. It's about everyone I come in contact with, and they help me to learn by asking me the questions or by pushing me. It's like you saying, and tell me more.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. More? What a concept.
I know that by talent you are a teacher, and by talent you're also a counselor. And then here you have this other division to you of what you are now calling mediumship or psychic reading. So it's how does that feel when I say that to you?
It feels weird, but at the same time, I'm beginning to like the word medium more, because I think of medium as a way to communicate. Art is a medium, writing is a medium, and I think that ends up being my role is the expression of the information as part of that expression.
You're the mediator, aren't you?
Mediator, yeah. Teacher, whatever. But a mediator.
Mediator between the different spiritual realms and our human biological experience.
Right. I guess that's the best way to explain it. It's very difficult because I'm picking the words. I'm pretty well read. I have a fairly extensive vocabulary, and yet my tongue trips over my T when I try to explain these concepts.
That's interesting.
The concepts are much bigger than the words I have.
That's interesting.
And I think if you're listening to me, you need to listen with that other awareness, so that this communication is happening through all your senses, your sixth sense, whatever awareness that is, to hear what's being said. Because I know communication happens in so many different ways, through your body language, through your eyes, that's why it's hard for me, I think, to do this over the phone, this interview, because the communication happens in so many different physical ways, along with that spiritual knowing.
So when you go into this time where you're going to be called upon to do the mediation, the mediumship, the psychic reads, you are transitioning yourself to embrace all of your senses that are on this earthly plane, but there's this collection of sensory processes that are also activated inside of you that we really don't have a language for, because we can't sit there and point to our ears or our eyes or our nose or our fingers. Instead, we have to point to what you call the intuitive realm, but there must be such a collection of intuitive sensory systems that you're actively accessing. And that the more you become capable of this, the bigger your capacity to have these different sensors comes into play as well. I don't know. How close did I get?
Right on. That was right on. Thank you. And that concept of the more I do it, the more ways I'll have to communicate. Once again, going back to, you learn how to read in kindergarten and first grade, and second grade you get more vocabulary,
right.
Moving through that process. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And it is difficult to discuss because the words are so small compared to the actual information that is being dispersed.
It also depends, how you communicate also depends on your audience too, doesn't it? Because you want to be able to make yourself make sense to this other person, but you don't know what their experience is with their intuitive set of sensory processing. So
absolutely.
So I guess it's easier between you and I because we kind of know each other. We can do this, but we're also mindful of being listened to as well. So we're not so mindful of what the listener brings to this package. But can you give us another story of this weekend where you did tap into a whole series of sensory experiences in you? And can you talk about both what you shared and what the person discovered and how it healed the person, and also who you as the conduit were experiencing?
There was a moment someone was asking about her relationships and the fact that she wasn't making good choices along the way. The information came through was very, very clear. It was the not knowing the worth of self, and therefore only attracting what we believed we were worthy of in a relationship. And as you get to know yourself better and understand and your worth, your self-worth, and put that out to the universe, you start attracting a mate of worth, What was interesting was it was very clear that this information was important for this person.
Yes.
But it was also very important for me. And there was not only this knowledge that was being dispersed, but the clear sense of, this is for you too, Mary. And I felt it as this excitement in myself, this vibration in myself. So talk about a different kind of communication. There, I was having a physical experience of this information also being for me, and maybe for everybody in the room. It was the one time I felt that, the only time I felt that. But I have to say, the woman who had the young man attached to her, as I was bringing through the information, I started crying.
Wow.
I could feel the anguish of what had happened in this, and it moved me to tears immediately. And then I moved on, and the tears stopped immediately. So I think there's this empathy. There's this empathy attached to this whole thing. When we talk about different ways of communicating, I think everybody in the room felt that moment of anguish. That's, so, and some of these people knew each other, but by and large, it wasn't like they were all good friends who walked in the room, you know what I mean? And yet we all shared this anguish, the same as we share when something else happens in the world, that, a flood or an earthquake, we all have that sense of shared anguish. So I think, we are so, to think that we are actually separate from each other, we're proved wrong all the time, and yet something in our critical consciousness will turn that off, and we'll forget how connected we are to other people. Well, we need to protect ourselves, too. You can't be walking around in anguish all the time. But same as walking around in perfect joy all the time, keeps you from having other experiences. So, as a human being, right?
Yeah,
so,
beautifully said.
Once again, that was a very interesting, which I have experienced, one-on-one with a client before. But I think, in stepping back and reviewing it from this place a couple days later, that moment was experienced by the entire room.
So I'm going to ask you to reveal some other stories as well. If we just analyze the process and just step back again, analyze the process again, you are as much of a conduit as you are a student, almost as if all of you were summoned to this class, and you were the receiver. The radio signal was going through you, so to speak, but you were also sitting present as a student, and also as an experienced teacher as well. So you take, again, it's like you take this whole huge, if you can let yourself be as big as you are and beyond, then it's so much easier to be everything as opposed to feeling like you have to just be within like the teacher role or the medium role. It's like you could be expansive of who yourself is and then become more expanded because you two are sitting there listening and experiencing and learning at the same moment.
Yes. And if that doesn't feel weird, I don't know. It's very very weird experience. Not uncomfortable, but interesting. Definitely very interesting. It's true. And I think praying so hard to be 100% in my integrity at the moment allowed me to do that. Really allowed me to like you said, be the conduit for the information and at the same time be present as a student and receive that part that belongs to me also. And I think, I know you've done energy work. Anybody who works with energy and in this realm, it's all energy, experiences that. I know when I've worked with Reiki or whatever kind of healing energies, the gift is that I receive it also. So anytime we open up to be a part of this energy exchange, not just me as the teacher, or the conduit, but everybody in the room, anybody in the whole world is able to experience that exchange of energy and the healing that comes through everyone in the room who's participating. Does that make sense?
Oh, it does. Usually I remember when I was a little kid in elementary school and the teacher was saying, do you realize that there's all this space between the molecules? And we're talking about like the 60s, before we knew as much as we know now about quantum physics or the electrons. We really didn't know that on the popular level. And I remember sitting at that hardwood desk and putting my hand on it. I must have been 6 or 7, and looking at it and going, this seems so solid to me, but there's nothing solid about it. It's more space than solidarity. And I remember thinking, I want to just take my hand and make my hand space and take my hand and go through the desk and resonate my hand with the desk. And that is a moment, in a sense, if we could hold on to that concept that we are energy and we've coalesced in form, but that our form is, while real, it's just a small minutia of what reality actually is, to expand it so that we are this energy and that we're coalescing with other energies that we can flow with. Well, that's my association with what you're saying.
Yeah, and I don't know why I brought this up, but years ago when I was really coming in contact with these concepts of spirit and how unlimited we are as spirit, I really asked, if I'm so powerful and so unlimited, what is the point of this human body? Oh, and very clearly, it came to me that the body is like a wand. It gathers and directs energy.
Oh my gosh!
And ever since I've known that, and I've had some trials and tribulations in my life with this body, but ever since I understood that, I realized that wherever I placed my body, something was happening. Energy was being focused. That no matter where I was, that's exactly where I was supposed to be. Now, this concept, comes to a lot of people. We understand that, but that was my moment, and my moment of how completely I belong here on Earth. There is a true purpose, whether I'm aware of it on a conscious level or an unconscious level. There is such a tremendous purpose in my being here to focus this energy, whatever it is. And so what's really cool now is a lot of times when I'm working with people, I get a sense of the energy that they are focusing. And sometimes it's healing energy, and sometimes it's growth energy, and sometimes it's even energy that breaks up other energies, like breaking up the dirt, to plant a new garden, to allow for room for that growth. It's really cool. It's really cool.
Wow, this is truly expanding. I mean, so now here you have this group of people on Saturday. Was there anybody or in that group where they walked away with a spiritual enlightenment that they floated out of the room with, that seemed to shift them on their path in a very different, enlightened fashion? Anybody that comes to mind? Or is it everybody?
I don't know. I don't know that it was anybody. Yeah, we didn't really have much time to talk afterwards. And this is the kind of stuff that I'll hear later. That moment in time when that was said just really changed things for me. I've learned to not get involved in the outcome because it drives me crazy. Especially if you don't hear back from someone for a while. I'm like, oh my God, was it good? Was it bad? Did I hurt anybody? And then 8 years later, I'll get a phone call. Well, I don't know if you remember saying this, but my whole life changed from that moment. So I've learned if I don't stay out of the outcome, I get really emotionally wrecked over it. So I'm hoping that I'll get a chance to spend time with some of these people later on and find out what it was like for them. But I can say, well, everybody applauded and everybody hugged me on the way out the door. To me, that says, you know, it was a mutually enjoyed experience. But as far as the rest of it, I think I have to, if I need to know it, Spirit will make sure I get that information.
Now, we're not even close to the end, but I want to make sure people are knowing how to get in touch with you, Mary. And so they can reach you where and how and when.
My business phone number is 424-781-0027. I'm in San Pedro, California is my office, but I can also work by phone and by Skype. And then I have another office out in Murrieta, California, in the upper desert there. And that phone number is 951-461-4363 or mary@rosewoodregional.com. And that is actually a medical and holistic health clinic where they're really working on integrating the holistic with the, you know, standard Western medical. And it's my dream come true being a part of this. I do hypnosis there and a number of other things. So it's a very cool place. But either number is, you know, I can be reached on either number.
And you have a website that people can also enjoy. What's the name of that?
Yeah. www.hypnohalls, HYPNOHALLS.com.
Thanks. So now, Mary, do you feel like right now you could do a reading? And if so, if you could like simultaneously talk about your experience of shifting yourself into that realm, because that's a different energy data. And I'm going to ramble here for a little bit while you get yourself going. And then also talk to us about the experience of seeing and hearing. And you can do a read on me or on an event or, you know, whatever comes to your mind. And then so that people who move into their own psychic capacities or explore their own spiritual realms or the relationship with the spiritual realms can understand someone's process. Because you are a person of integrity, and it'd be nice for them as they are people of integrity to kind of understand that experience. They can go, oh, I'm not crazy. This is actually for real. I know I call you up while you're thinking about it. Let me know when you're ready. I know that I called you up last week or a week ago and said, I cannot believe the experience I had with the Akashic Records, let me tell you. And I knew that there were only like 2 people that I could actually tell, and you would get the power of the reality of it for me, because everybody else would look at me like I was cross-eyed and an idiot and need to be put in a psychiatric hospital. I say that, oh no, listeners, you know, now what are you going to do? But I say that more because I think that we all go through this, like, is this real or not? Because if this is real, then this is huge implications. And if it is not, wow, I have got a great imagination. You know, so. Okay, so
well,
go ahead.
Yeah, as a fellow hypnotherapist, you know that our imagination is the only vehicle for communication we really have. Whether we're imagining our feelings, what we see, what we hear, what we smell, what we taste, if we imagine a presence in front of us, it appears to be imagination. And yet, if you think of it as that part of our mind being the only vehicle we have for communication on that level, and we use this in hypnosis and in a lot of powerful modalities, then you have to actually decide, is imagination something that we can't trust? And if you're an artist, you have to trust your imagination, because that's the way you communicate, that's the way you heal. I think we have to look at it as something that may not what we look at as something that may not be real. Maybe it is real, very real, maybe more real than anything else that's going on with us, because I look at it as a vehicle for communication. One thing
beautiful
about this process is, for me, it's always been a little weird. How do you get there, into that place where you're open to receive? So I found my way to do it. But one thing I actually learned from you was to, instead of going to that place from this feeling of trepidation of, okay, well, now what am I doing? Now what's going to happen, is to approach it from a place of just joy and bliss, to be having this experience. So I've been working a lot with that to overcome my own natural fear from the reluctant psychic. I love how you said that.
Yeah.
And boy, it's a very freeing experience to come from that place of joy and bliss and complete acceptance of this process is real. And as far as going to that place right now, that I'm in it. I'm talking to you. I'm very aware. I'm very conscious. But I'm also in that place, and I know that Spirit is speaking through me right now. And for the little lecture on imagination, that's not something it's something I've contemplated as a professional hypnotherapist, but not in the way that was just expressed. I know those were not my words. I know that concept is coming through me from someone who's trying to open up that perspective for all of us. So that, don't assume that your imagination is something that is not real.
Wow. I was reading Osho today, Osho, O-S-H-O, wonderful writer of meditations and such. And one thing he said is, I'm going to take you through 120 different types of meditations, but hey, forgo being anxious and uptight about it. Just be playful. Just play with it. And one of his series of meditations is all about how to just let go. Just let go of your mind, let go of everything, and just let the freedom and the easiness come in there. But that when he used the word playfulness, because I'd had this 2,000-page book in front of me, and I just closed the book, and my son said, wow, you sure read a lot. I said, yeah, I read a paragraph that made me think so much I can't go any farther. It's it's like, why not have fun with it? Why not be playful with it? Why not be at ease with it? Not take ourselves so seriously. One time I was, my son and I are trying to do the astral projection and the remote viewing practices, and so I said, okay, well, I'm gonna do this when I'm gone on the stricter things. I had 2 minutes in my car waiting for my other son. I said, okay, I'm just going to go see what my other son's doing at home. And I thought, okay, he's sitting in front of the television set and he's watching the show. And da-da-da. So I came home and I said, so how was the show? And he goes, what are you talking about? I said, oh, okay, so it was all my imagination. He goes, you better believe it was. And on the other hand, I've had experiences where I'm right there in the moment and I can see details and know, and I'll verify it, and I'll go, oh, my gosh, it's so freaky. I was right there and it's verified. So we have to play with it. It isn't 100%, is it?
It isn't 100%. And the other thing is, I'm going to tell a little story about you.
Oh, dear.
I remember when you were working on bending spoons with your mind, we were having this conversation, and we had all just done it at the International Hypnosis Federation conference. But you were trying to do it on your own. And you were so frustrated with not being able to bend the spoon with your own mind without, the energy from the room. And I got a very clear vision of you walking down a street with very tall buildings on either side of you. And you're so focused on the spoon that you don't notice that all the buildings behind you are bending. So I think, that's the other thing. We become so focused on creating this one thing that we don't realize we're actually doing it because the outcome we expect is not happening right in front of us. So it's like we get blinders on. We don't see how it actually is happening in other areas.
That is interesting. and yet this is all an attempt to walk in integrity, too. We're trying to walk in integrity and say, okay, this time it worked, and this time was a complete flop, and yet you're saying maybe it's not such a flop, maybe it's just we can't see where we were actually constructive in the moment.
Exactly. And I think once, we're trying, we're focusing and we're trying, and our expectation of how that should manifest is not met. And so we decided it didn't work. And yet, because we were so focused, we didn't see how it did work, what we did find out. Like seeing your son watching the show, at the same time, how can you even be sure of the time period?
Well,
maybe you were showing a different moment in time or a parallel moment in time. So those are the things that our poor little minds, have trouble wrapping around, and those are bigger concepts.
Yeah, I guess as soon as you say that, though, then I do feel like, boy, we can have a slippage of reality in terms of trying to walk in our integrity as soon as we say, well, I was doing this remote viewing, and, I must have been remote viewing something else that wasn't this time. I mean, you may be right, but to the effort of trying to have integrity and verification, know when we are actually doing it or when we are in our imaginative realm, that's not about reality but about what we create in our mind. The remote viewing people, they talk about how you can interfere with the actual process of remote viewing by your mind being active or having expectations, which is exactly what you were saying before, is like you empty yourself of expectations. So
right, and I think that's what anybody who's listening in needs to know, that they need to not only focus on what they want to create with that moment or tune into that moment, but all the different ways that they can receive that information instead of being stuck on, I can only receive it in one way. To be more open, more aware of what actually is happening around them. Does that make sense?
Yes. Here again, we have this huge, like, satellite radar receptor that says, okay, I have all these sensors out there. I don't know which one you're going to choose to communicate me on. I'm going to activate all of them again. It's like, okay, let's not stick to one radio signal or channel. Let's open up all the vehicles we possibly can to receive.
Right.
Are you ready to read?
I just did. That was a reading, my friend.
I lost it. Oh, dear. Oh, that's interesting. Does it feel different to you? Or?
It feels, actually, physically, I stood up. My chest went up, and I was filled with information. So, which is different than I was sitting down talking to you. And then all of a sudden, now that you're asking, I physically got up and expanded my body.
Wow.
And this information started coming forward. Let me see if there's more.
Oh, she's doing it, folks. She's listening to the process that she gets into.
So, and we've talked about this before maybe, but if you're praying and you're praying to God, or God of your understanding, or all the gods, however that is for you.
Okay.
You have to, as you're doing that, you have to imagine that there's a God there, because probably God's not sitting right in front of you having tea. So I think if we're moving from this place of faith, that we say our prayer, there's somebody listening, that we have to extend that faith to all these areas of communication, of the type of communication that's beyond our 5 physical senses. So if you have faith in that process, how can you not have faith in all the rest of it? Because it's all the same thing, the same mechanism.
Okay, so if I process this, and I'm thinking about the book called The Biology of Beliefs and all the associated research on that the power of our belief can make it so, because the belief itself creates a conversion. That's on a biological level. So you're saying that on an energetic level, the power of our belief can make it so as well, because our belief creates a coalescence of the energy.
And not can, but does every single time.
Oh, wow. So again, that idea that, be careful what you think. Be careful what you ask for. Be careful what you
wish for. Be careful what you wish for, you might get it. Yeah. And we probably all have that experience where we were desiring some information. What does this mean in my life? How do I interpret that? And then all of a sudden, you have a book in your hands, and it opens to a paragraph that has, the book has nothing to do with what you're thinking about, but somehow that paragraph sums it up for you in a way that's very understandable. There's a communication process happening. Your prayer's been answered. But we don't always see those things as being related to that act of faith, that we even have access to this realm of information. If we don't get the answer right at that moment, we think the answer's not coming, and then boom, all of a sudden it comes from this very bizarre place. Well, we received our answer. So staying out of how it's supposed to manifest is I guess, the most important thing. Kind of like you asking me, so what was the experience like for all these people? Well, I'm going to stay out of that. That does, if I want to know that, if I need to know that, I will get to know that. They'll either call or I'll hear from somebody else, But
well,
if
actually,
I expect that they're all going to come to me after class and say, this is how you changed my life, then I'm going to be disappointed.
It's like you did get feedback, though. The owner called you the next day, or the individual called you the next day and said, I've gotten so many phone calls about yesterday.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. She called me the next morning. And this is a person who's very involved with this type of thing and has been around a lot of it. So it helped my self-confidence that she called and said, it was right up there with, all the best that she's seen, and made me feel more real. Not that I don't feel real, but, that critical part of myself always questions, is this real? Just like any human being does. And so for me, to get that kind of feedback was pretty, it helped. It just helped me be stronger in who I am, I guess.
Yes.
Who I am and what I do, and its importance at the same time.
That you take this moment to kind of go into your own self-reflective insecurity, I think is so valuable for people because, number one, that's your integrity. Number two, it's your growing, expanding identity of yourself as this human being that was born as a little baby and was raised in a family as a child, and we are made to feel like we don't know much and we're awkward and we have to grow up, and who makes us think that we know what we're talking about, et cetera, et cetera. So we get this identity of having to be wisely humble because we are ignorant, and at the same time overly identified with it as well as we expand and say, okay, I want to be my expanded self, knowing that in integrity I'm not that expanded and not as expanded as I want to be, not as expanded as my expanded self is. But if I walking in my own limitations or in my own small self-identity, I don't even get to play with my expanded self and have that joy because I'm squishing her and holding her into this small, tiny box, and what she wants to do is play and be as big and limitless as you described at the beginning of the show, that we are limitless packages of energy. What was your phrase?
We are beings with no limits. No limits to who we are, what we can create, what we can experience. We're just completely unlimited in that state.
Wow.
And manifesting in a limited human state is unlimited also, if you think about it.
Wow.
That as an unlimited being, you can manifest even in limited ways just to have that experience, to know what that means. And
Mary, then we have no right to be limited then. We have no We have no right to walk around and say, "Oh, I just can't. I just can't." Uh-oh.
Well, if we didn't do that, what would be the purpose of being in a human body? Because, being a human being and walking through our perceived limitations and growing out of those and embracing this unlimited part of ourself. I was working with a client, I guess, a week or two ago, and the visual I got was she was this huge, magnificent energy. Her human self would turn around to that energy of herself and take some of that energy a cup at a time to experience. And what Spirit was asking her was, I'm right behind, I am you, I am right behind you. I just want you to back up just a few inches so that you can be 100% your energy instead of turning around and taking a cup full at a time. But I think she had to get to that point in her life. I think that taking a cupful at a time serves us as human beings until we get to a point where we can start taking bucketfuls and then, swimming pools full. So yes and no. I mean, as human beings, we're limited and we don't need to be. And yet the learning of that is so powerful. It's a powerful process all on its own that even creates more energy.
So Mary, do you hear yourself say this in contrast to the other side of you that says, I'm just new at this, I don't know what I'm doing, this is kind of awkward, and then you hear this other side of you that says, I am this. I can take this whole swimming pool of a Saturday experience and I can walk with it, swishing around me because it is all of who I am, and I'm beyond that.
Yes, I hear myself saying that. And my human side is going, cool. and at the same time going, oh boy, I don't know.
Well, listeners, we hope that this honest dialogue between Mary and I about it being expanded has helped you really step outside your comfort zone. You may think us crazy, but why don't you walk into your own craziness for a little bit and see what realities dwell there, and let's all be in our biggest self. The more of ourselves than we let ourselves know, so that we can help each other, love each other, create. Not live in the frustrations of feeling like we're small, but living in the ability to really help this whole planet evolve and expand. Mary, thank you so much for walking us into this path. This is going to happen again, I know. I look forward
Thank you.
to it.
I hope so. I'm looking forward to it.
Good. Awesome. Keep us informed. Thank you so much. Have a fantastic day, everyone. Mary, you included.
Thank you, and you too, and everyone out there. Thank you very much for listening in.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Cheers. Bye.